Welcome back to the DraftKings Life Podcast. I'm Jason Jones, Senior Recruitment Marketing Specialist, and I'm joined by the one and only Meg Powers, Talent Acquisition Associate. What up, Meg?
Hello, Jonesy. I'm getting ready for the holidays a bit earlier than normal this year, so that's what I've been doing. I'm not normally one to skip over Thanksgiving, but 2020 is weird and holiday lights make me happy. So here we are. That's what I've been doing with my time. What's new with you?
I actually got a car over the weekend. So, and I actually turned 33 next week. So excited for a birthday, a new whip, and hopefully we get enough snow where this upcoming snowboard season's fun. And most importantly, ideally, me and you hit the links next year for some social distance golfing. So we'll see.
That's amazing. Rip to your bike.
I know, RIP to the bike.
I'm excited for you about the car though. And I know we're definitely going to have to try to fit in golf in 2021. We tried a bunch of times and just ended up canceling it. But Speaking of 2021, this week's guest has played a very important role in DraftKings success over the past year, and we can't wait to see what she does in the coming year. So with that, Chrissie, please introduce yourself and tell us about what you do at DraftKings.
Hey, Jason. Hey, Meg. Thanks so much for having me. I'm excited to be here and hoping 2021 is good for all of us. So I am Chrissie Gorman. I'm the Vice President of Strategic Initiatives at DraftKings. Been at the company about 2.5 years. Love it, and I'm excited to share more about my experience.
Welcome.
Thanks for joining us. I'm also 2.5 years, so I feel like we started around the same time.
For sure.
Well, today we're going to be running through some questions to get to know more about your DraftKings experience. And I like to start the podcast off by just seeing how you're doing with the current state of the world, remote work and all of that.
I'm good. It's as we'll talk about, I'm sure, a big part of my job has been leading the integration efforts of SB Tech with legacy DraftKings, and certainly strange to do that remotely, but it's everything. I'm healthy and happy, so can't complain.
Good, nice. So your current role involved in leading strategic initiatives. Can you give us an example of what a strategic initiative looks like?
Sure. So a couple things in my role. So the biggest part of my role, like I said, is leading the integration of following our business combination with SB Tech. So legacy DraftKings, legacy SB Tech coming together. And we've been working on that since before we closed the transaction in April. The other part of my job is sort of a mix of broad strategic projects for the companies. Example of something I'm working on right now is company and executive goal setting for 2021, which will be really the translation of, what are we trying to do? What's our strategy? What's our op plan? And then tracking that on an ongoing basis.
Great. So I guess you gave us a little bit of an overview, but what does a typical day look like for you?
Yeah, so I bet you get this in every interview, but the cliche, there is no typical day, definitely fits my role as well. But I would say generally, if I think about kind of the variety of projects I'm working on, especially in the integration side, it's a really cross-functional project. And so a lot of my time is spent meeting with the various executives and stakeholders and sort of being that go-between, between the finance work stream and the product and tech work stream and compliance and so forth, and kind of seeing the common threads. And then myself and my team will kind of regroup, go through, okay, what's going well, where are there gaps, where do we need to kind of play that cross-functional role. So a lot of follow-up related to specific challenges or next steps on the integration plan. But it's a variety. I mean, it's definitely a role where I'm meeting cross-functionally a lot, which I love. I've gotten to know a lot of people across the organization and solving problems, but also not being the person with the team and the resources. So it's more of a influence and manage from the sidelines a bit.
That's really cool. So how did you even land at DraftKings, and what was your first impression of the company?
So my first impression is an interesting one because I actually joined the day that PASPA was overturned, which for those listening, was the Supreme Court ruling that really gave states the opportunity to legalize sports betting state by state. So pretty crazy first day, that opened a really large market for DraftKings. So that certainly was an atypical first day, but I would say, my impression from that was one of excitement and just really just seeing the opportunity of the company. And, how I got to DraftKings, really just a story of network and having great mentors and advisors. So through a startup I had before DraftKings, I had met Ezra Kuchar, who is our chief business officer here at DraftKings now. And when Ezra joined, he called me and said, "Hey, I need a head of corp dev, a head of M&A, which is the role I originally joined." And I actually said no at first. I was a little burnt out on, what I thought was a startup, though DraftKings certainly is at the time was much further along than where I'd come from. But after a couple months, I called him back and said, "Hey, we should talk." And, the funny thing is he told me, and Ezra actually worked at NASA before. And so he told me, this is the smartest group of people that I've worked with, even the fact that he's worked at NASA. And so he certainly hasn't disappointed with that. I mean, he was pretty spot on. It's been a really great experience and really fun to get to work with smart people every day.
That's a really cool story.
Yeah, I didn't know that. I didn't know that about that you guys knew each other beforehand. So that's interesting. Great. So you mentioned you were heavily involved with the business combination with SB Tech. Can you walk us through how long a deal like that takes and who's involved?
Sure. So in terms of timeline, I mean, deals can be pretty unique, I think, for a couple of reasons. One, certainly just the dynamics of, the companies and the number of companies that are involved. In this case, it was SB Tech and DraftKings, and, getting to know the team and working with them. The other piece of it is certainly, how you're going to finance a transaction like that. And so for us, that was the SPAC and the business combination with Diamond Eagle, which closed in April. So those are kind of some of the dynamics that can certainly determine the timeline. But with SB Tech in particular, so I know the executive teams really started talking, the founders started talking kind of fall of 2018. I joined for the first trip to Sofia, Bulgaria, which is where one of the offices is, in November of 2018. So at the time of this recording, about 2 years ago, actually. And so it was really great to just get to know the team there, spend some time with them. We did a couple of nice dinners, and really just start the relationship. And so from there, we entered into a more formal diligence process that I ended up leading on behalf of the corporate development team at the time. So we started that Q1 of 2019, and then, fast forward just over a year later, we closed the transaction. And in terms of who's involved, I mean, it was really a cross-functional effort, both internally, and then certainly you'll have external advisors. In our case, we had, some financial advisors, both on the investment banking side, who were kind of representing us on the transaction, as well as, accounting firms to kind of look at the numbers a little bit more deeply than our team had the capacity for. And so you kind of figure out like, okay, where do we need to supplement versus where can we do it internally? And certainly legal counsel as well, so both internal and external. So definitely a really large group effort, and it was really exciting to see it come to fruition.
That's cool. Yeah. For those of us who aren't involved in the M&A world, it's just kind of cool. Get a peek behind the curtain just a little bit, be like, okay, like just like the length of time it takes to close a deal, and also more importantly, like the people involved and the checks and balances and whatnot. So that's really cool. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny. I mean, it felt like maybe at the time, certainly when you're in it, it can feel like a long process. But looking back on it, once it's done, it's sort of like, that wasn't too bad.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it's you're talking multiple months to, it can be, at least in our case, over a year, and sometimes even longer.
Nice. Cool. So you alluded to this when we asked about your first impressions and how you ended at DraftKings. But so before joining us, you were co-founder and CEO of a company for about 3 years. Can you describe that experience to us? Like, what's that like?
Sure. So I had previously co-founded a company called Power Forward with Coach K, the Duke basketball coach. I'm a Duke grad, so I'm certainly a fan and partial to him, though I know that's not everyone's opinion, but he is a great guy. But co-founded it with him and CAA, which is a global talent agency. And really what we were doing was building a really experiential content-based leadership development program online, taking a lot of what Coach K had used with his teams and sort of talked about and spoke about and had written about, but hadn't really created sort of ongoing content and experience around it. And then we ended up interviewing a variety of leaders, which was a great experience for me because I got to do that. So everyone from Sarah Blakely, the founder of Spanx, who talked about creativity, which is something she's been, been a big part of her success at Spanx, to a guy named Leland Melvin, who is a little less known, but amazing story. He's the only person on the planet who has played in the NFL and gone to space as an astronaut. So you can imagine,
wow.
What it was like to talk to him too. So really, really cool experience. And like you mentioned, I did it for about 3.5 years. We got to about 20 corporate customers and then ended up licensing the content to an HR SaaS company that really needed content and sort of had the sales force and the tech infrastructure and so forth, called Cornerstone On Demand. It was a really, in many ways, a very humbling experience to start something from scratch. Certainly pretty incredible. I'd never met Coach K before. I'd been a fan. I'd gone to Duke, but certainly getting to know him. And I felt like every meeting I had with him was sort of a lesson in leadership, of just scribbling down notes and takeaways from just sitting with him, which is pretty cool.
That's unforgettable. That's awesome.
Yeah. So it sounds like you've experienced, a few different like workplace environments, everything from startup to where we're at now. So how would you describe the DraftKings culture here?
Yeah, I think DraftKings has a pretty incredible culture. And I think a big part of it is, the fact that we have, the founders running the company, which is not always the case at this stage company. So I think we're very lucky to have that and to have incredible founders who care about building a great team and culture. So how I would describe the culture, I think it's a culture really focused on ownership and accountability. And that's something I've been super impressed with. Again, getting to work really cross-functionally whenever, I'm talking to someone whose scope and responsibilities is very different than my own. I know that they'll get their stuff done and deliver, and I don't have to worry about it, even though I may not know all the intricacies of how they'll do that. I have confidence that they will deliver, which is a great feeling, and that's just a great place to come to work every day. I think a couple other things. I think just the fact that every day I get to work with really inspiring and motivated people is just, it creates such a positive culture of like, we're on a winning team, and it's not just because we're sports focused, but that really is sort of I feel like the feeling that really resonates throughout everything that I've experienced at DraftKings. I think the final thing I'll say is it's very analytical. So even in problem solving and so forth, I think we all take a very analytical approach, which I think is just a great foundation for solving problems and level setting across different functions.
Yeah, I agree. I agree.
What is the saying we have? Data is king.
Yeah.
I actually haven't heard that, but that's good. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Sometimes.
and then the VP of our department for Meg and I, he likes to say numbers without, or something like data without numbers is you know what, scratch it. Actually
we gotta get George on the podcast.
We gotta get George on, yeah.
He does love his charts though, and all of that. So we're gonna have to get George on now to give us the himself.
Data without context is just numbers.
Okay.
Yep.
Yes.
That's his big, saying. So, and Preacher is a couple of koozies,
you need both.
Too.
Wow, that's legit. The koozies.
So let's say Meg and I are two wide-eyed, bushy-tailed fresh grads from Duke, and we want to join your team, Chrissie. Why should someone like us want to work for you and your team at DraftKings? What's your pitch?
Sure. So I think the first part of it is why DraftKings. And for me, it's really around, I mean, the culture, like I mentioned, as well as just the opportunity and where we are as a company. I mean, it's such a rare, I think really like once in a generation opportunity to get this multi-billion-dollar market that's opening state by state and that we're at the forefront of it. That doesn't come around very often. And so I think that's super, super compelling from a company perspective and an industry perspective, and the fact that we're going to continue to grow and scale as part of that. You just get to be a part of this organization at this like incredible moment of growth. I mean, I joined, like I said, 2.5 years ago. I think it was about 400 employees, mostly in Boston, and now we're a global company of 2,800 plus. So that's not a long time, and to have that kind of growth. More specifically, my group, I touched on this a bit, but I think one of the great things about what we do is we really sit at the center of a lot of these big business problems or opportunities for the company. And so we're a small, very agile team. And on our team, you get to see a lot, you get to know a lot of people, and really sort of just stay on top of what what's happening across the company, and get to play a role in a lot of different areas because of that. So are you guys sold? You can join my team?
I'm applying to the first role you have now.
David would love that. He jumped on our team meeting, and I think I said one thing, and he was like, "Do you want to come work on our team?"
Yes.
I was like,
yeah. See, we're very open to accepting new candidates. So there you
go. Great. So, I know we've talked a lot about work and DraftKings and everything. So outside of that, when you're not working, what do you like to do in your free time?
So I'm a big reader. I read probably like 50 to 60 books a year. So pretty, yeah. Cool. I am a mix of, I'm not an audiobook person, but I will always have a book on my phone or iPad, just sort of fitting it in, even when I was living in New York, commuting on the subway. So definitely love to read a lot, sort of a mix of everything from novels to memoirs to business books. That's something I love to do. The other thing more recently, my husband and I actually just bought a house. And so I guess another non-work activity is now furnishing said house, which is a whole new set of challenges or opportunities than I have faced in previous apartment situations.
Actually, so my wife and I just moved into an apartment and like just trying to like find the right pieces, but a house very different, bigger. So yes, kudos to you.
Yeah, no, it's a lot. I mean, we're super excited, but we have like these unfurnished rooms that now it's like, wait, we need to figure this out. So it's going to be a slow process.
It's funny you say that. So I'm in the second bedroom and there's literally nothing on the wall. So I'm in a room with just like 4 white walls and nothing around, and maybe we'll hang up some artwork, but right now it's just kind of like life and work. So we'll see.
Yeah. No, it's painting, we have all these things to do. So it will be keeping me busy the next couple months.
Yeah.
I love that. I honestly just told Jonesy that if I move into my own place next year, that I'm most excited about being able to decorate it and stuff. But an apartment, is a totally different ball game than a house. But if you need any help, I love to decorate and do things like that. So that's exciting for you guys.
Nice. Yeah. Thank
awesome.
you.
Okay, so one last question just before we get into like the 2-minute drill, but in general, what's one piece of advice you have for a candidate who's looking to join, any position at DraftKings?
Yeah, so I would say the one piece of advice that I'd have is don't shy away from the company if you're not a huge sports fan. So I consider myself to be a sports fan, but then I look at some of my colleagues, and I'm they would probably hardly consider me to be a sports fan, just because of the sort of fandom from certainly some of our team. But that doesn't mean that if you're not into sports, there's not a place for you at DraftKings. I think what I'd encourage people to do is think more broadly about the why DraftKings. And so even some of the things I mentioned about this multi-billion-dollar market opening up, the opportunity to scale with an organization, the culture. Like there's so many other reasons why someone would join DraftKings besides I love sports, that I would definitely not want anyone to be discouraged or not think about the company if they're not a big sports fan.
Yeah, that's great advice. Wonderful. So let's move into the 2-minute drill section of the podcast. So yeah, going to ask you some lightning round questions. We're trying to get competitive with this season, so we'll see how many we can get through. Jonesy, do you have a timer on hand? Okay, great.
Yeah.
Whenever you're ready.
Ready.
We're not messing around.
No. Where were you born?
Massachusetts.
Favorite musician?
Fits in the Tantrums or Edward Sharpe.
Love that. Favorite season of the year?
Spring or fall?
Favorite Duke basketball player?
Good question. I would say Tyus Jones, who was a big piece of the 2015 national championship that I got to go to. So nice. I'll always remember that.
Cool. Favorite quarantine hobby, if you have one? Reading, maybe?
Yeah, I mean, reading, I would say baking, certainly fallen into that cliche.
Sourdough?
Favorite mobile app? Mobile app.
I would say Goodreads, so it needs a refresh.
Dogs or cats?
Dogs.
Favorite Duke or UNC game attended?
These are very personalized. I would say my freshman year game at home, just my first experience in Cameron. Duke UNC packed to the ceiling, and JJ Redick was the star of the game, which is probably aging me a little, but it was a fun one.
Nice. Last book you read or podcast listened to?
So I listen to Pivot with Kara Swisher and Scott Galloway every week, and highly recommend. It's like a great podcast on tech and media. Book, The Beauty in Breaking. It was a memoir by a Black female ER doctor. I highly recommend that.
Nice. 25 seconds. Last movie you enjoyed?
I'm more of a TV person. Can I say that?
Yeah.
I'm watching The Crown.
Very nice. Very nice. And Princess Di just came back, so hopefully I don't spoil that for anyone. Oh.
Yeah, I haven't watched yet, so yeah.
Oh, sorry. Stranded on a desert island with one item you can only bring. What is that item?
Probably my Kindle. Keep me busy.
And then last question, favorite streaming service?
Netflix.
Well done.
Woo. Good work. That's awesome. Well, I learned Fits in the Tantrums. I saw them in the Seaport last year.
Oh, they're so good live. Yeah, I've seen them several times.
I didn't even realize like how many songs I knew, and then I went and it was great. So awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. You've been great. I feel like I've learned a lot this episode. So thanks again.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks for having me. It was fun.
Yeah. And before we close out today's podcast, Chrissie, what's a motto or mantra that you live by every day?
Oh, good question. I don't know if it's a motto so much as just sort of a life principle. I really believe that if you want something, you should tell people you want it, professionally or personally, because one, I think friends and colleagues will hold you accountable if it's something that's a big lofty goal and you're not sure you can achieve it. And two, I think people will think of you for opportunities. And that's actually how I got the opportunity to work with Coach K. Was a friend thought of me because I told everyone I was going to leave the job I was at and do a startup. And so I did.
That's awesome. So kind of like putting out to the universe, kind of like that kind of mindset.
Yes, for sure. For sure. Yeah. And I think people think of you and there's an accountability factor, which is, I think, very helpful. So
I agree. Thank you. That's really awesome. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Well, thanks guys. This was fun.
Yeah. And thank you for joining us today. And be sure to follow us on social media at DraftKings Life. Our podcast is available on all major podcast platforms, Apple, Google, Spotify. We got you. So be sure to download, listen, and even throw us a 5-star rating. Until next time, be safe, be kind, and take care.